Have you ever noticed how quickly people react to something that isn't even real yet? A message, a rumor, a small sign. And suddenly, the mind builds an entire future out of it. A future that doesn't exist, but feels so real that people start living inside it. A promotion they haven't received. Money they haven't earned. A dream they haven't reached. And sometimes, the price of celebrating too early is far greater than the disappointment of failure. This is one of those stories. In a quiet riverside town, far from the noise of crowded cities, lived a fisherman named Ethan. He wasn't wealthy, and he never expected life to be easy. Every morning before sunrise, he picked up his old fishing rod, kissed his wife Sarah goodbye, smiled at his young son Noah, and walked toward the river with one simple hope: that today would be a little better than yesterday. Some mornings, he returned home carrying enough fish to feed the family for days. Other mornings, he came back with empty hands and tired eyes. But he never complained. He believed that patience was stronger than luck. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan looked at Noah and said, "Come with me today." As they reached the river, everything felt strangely peaceful. The surface of the water looked like glass. Even the birds seemed quieter than usual. He chose a deep section of water where he had never fished before. He carefully attached fresh bait, took a deep breath, and cast his line. The bait disappeared beneath the dark water. For a few long moments, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the fishing rod bent so hard that Ethan nearly lost his balance. The line pulled with unbelievable force. His hands tightened around the rod. His heartbeat became louder than the river itself. Whatever had taken the bait wasn't moving. It wasn't swimming. It simply held the line with incredible strength. Ethan pulled. Nothing. He pulled harder. Still nothing. A smile slowly spread across his face. "I've never felt anything like this before," he whispered. Noah stared at the water with wide eyes. "Dad, is it a giant fish?" Ethan couldn't answer. He honestly didn't know. But in that moment, he believed he was holding on to the greatest catch of his entire life. That single belief would soon trigger a chain of events that neither of them could ever imagine. Ethan knew he couldn't pull whatever was beneath the water out by himself. The line was stretched as tight as a steel cable, and every second felt like a battle between him and the unseen force below the surface. He looked at Noah and smiled. "Run home. Tell your mom I think we've found something incredible. Tell her to get everything ready. If this is what I think it is, tonight will be a night we'll never forget." Noah sprinted home as fast as his little legs could carry him. His excitement was impossible to hide. He burst through the front door. "Mom, Dad caught the biggest fish he's ever seen. He says everything is going to change." Sarah froze. For a moment, she couldn't believe what she had just heard. A giant fish could mean money, fresh food, bills paid, maybe even enough left over to finally replace the leaking roof. A smile filled her face. But within seconds, that smile disappeared. A different thought entered her mind. If everyone finds out, they'll expect us to share. They'll come asking for favors. They'll want a piece of what isn't even theirs. The more she thought about it, the more worried she became. Fear slowly turned into poor judgment. Instead of waiting for Ethan to come home, she decided to take control of a problem that didn't even exist yet. She walked outside wearing mismatched clothes that made no sense together. Then she picked up the family dog and carried him on top of her shoulders while walking straight toward her neighbor's house. People stopped and stared. Children pointed. No one understood what they were looking at. Her neighbor opened the door and looked completely confused. "Sarah, are you all right? What happened to you? Why are you carrying your dog like that?" The question should have ended there, but Sarah suddenly exploded with anger. She accused her neighbor of insulting her. She shouted loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Within minutes, more neighbors gathered outside, trying to calm the situation. Instead, the argument became even worse. Sarah threatened to report everyone for harassment. The peaceful neighborhood that had lived in harmony for years suddenly became filled with shouting, confusion, and accusations. All because of a fish that no one had actually seen. Back at the river, Ethan was still struggling against the mysterious weight beneath the water. His arms were beginning to shake. Sweat rolled down his face despite the cool breeze. He took one long breath, then stepped into the river. If he wanted to know the truth, he would have to see it with his own eyes. Ethan stepped into the river, fighting against the force pulling his fishing line deeper into the dark water. The deeper he went, the heavier it felt. For a moment, his mind flashed with excitement, imagining a massive fish struggling below the surface. But something felt wrong. It wasn't moving like a living creature. It felt stuck. He took a deep breath and followed the line down into the cold water. The world above disappeared. Only silence remained beneath the surface. He pulled with all his strength, and slowly, the object began to rise. Seconds later, Ethan froze. It wasn't a fish. It wasn't anything alive at all. It was an old, waterlogged tree stump tangled in thick roots and mud. For a moment, he couldn't even react. All that struggle, all that hope for this. A hollow laugh escaped him as he finally dragged it to the shore. Back on land, he sat down in silence, staring at the useless piece of wood, realizing how quickly the mind can turn imagination into certainty. At the same time, far away in town, Sarah's situation was spiraling out of control. The neighbors she had accused were now speaking to local authorities. What started as an emotional outburst had turned into an official complaint. Her behavior, her accusations, and her refusal to calm down were all being recorded as disturbing public conduct. Sarah tried explaining herself, but the more she spoke, the worse it sounded. No one could understand why she had created such chaos over nothing. Hours later, Ethan finally made his way back home, empty-handed, tired, confused. But nothing could prepare him for what he saw when he entered the house. Sarah wasn't there. Their son looked at him quietly and said, "Mom went to the town office. They said she has to explain everything to the authorities." Ethan stood still. The river had taken nothing from him, but somehow, their actions had already created consequences far beyond what either of them had expected. And in that moment, he began to understand something deeply unsettling. Sometimes, the biggest damage doesn't come from what happens, but from what we assume is going to happen. The town office was crowded when Ethan arrived. Sarah was already there, standing in front of an official, trying to explain everything that had happened. But words were not working in her favor anymore. The neighbors were present too, describing the chaos she had created earlier that day. One after another, they spoke calmly, but firmly, about her sudden outburst and false accusations. Sarah tried to interrupt. She tried to explain that it all started because she believed something good was going to happen. But no one could understand that reasoning anymore. The official listened carefully, then made a decision based on the situation presented in front of him. Sarah was held responsible for creating unnecessary disturbance and filing emotional accusations without basis. A penalty was announced, and she was instructed to settle the fine before being allowed to leave. For the first time that day, Sarah went completely silent. Not angry, not defensive, just silent. Ethan stepped forward and looked at her. There was no blame in his eyes, only exhaustion and understanding. "Why did you do all of this?" he asked softly. Sarah lowered her head. "Because I thought something big was about to happen. I thought everyone would come and take it from us. I wanted to protect something that wasn't even real yet." The words hung in the air, heavy, honest, and painful. Ethan took a long breath. He finally understood everything. Not just the fishing line, not just the stump in the river, but the human mind itself. How quickly hope can turn into assumption, how easily fear can turn into action, and how dangerous it is to celebrate something before it exists. He looked at Sarah and said, "We didn't lose anything today because of bad luck. We lost peace because we treated imagination like reality." They walked out of the office together in silence. For the first time that day, there were no expectations, no assumptions, no imagined outcomes, just reality. And in that quiet moment, Ethan realized a truth that stayed with him forever. Never celebrate what you haven't caught yet, because sometimes the biggest loss is not failure. It's the cost of believing too early.